Hi, this is Queenie Yu from Bullet Point News. I'm with our mental health correspondent, Sue Morrison, a certified addiction and mental health counselor at White Brick Therapy in Stouffville. Sue, one of our audience members asked if negative thinking is part of one's personality or whether it can be changed.
That's a great question, Queenie. We can all get stuck on negative thinking. Actually, our brains are predisposed to defer to the negative. It's an interesting statistic, according to the National Science Foundation. 80% of people's thoughts are negative, and 95 of them are repetitive, so the same every day. So we can all succumb to negative thinking. I think it's quite common, more common than we think.
Why are our brains predisposed towards negative thinking?
If you really want me to go back in time, we can go back to the caveman days when they had to have negative thinking to survive. Now that doesn't serve us so much in society, but we can actually challenge these negative thoughts. Our brain is actually what they call neuroplastic in terms of it's malleable, it's pliable, and we can change our thoughts. First, we have to become aware of them, but it's something that affects all of us on a day to day basis.
When we come across an optimist, does that
Mm,
person have negative thinking? What happened with them?
Good question. A bunch of different things. It could be their upbringing. They were brought up in a positive household, so that's how they were, um, that was their environment, and that has a big part of it as well. But if we're brought up in a household that wasn't as positive, that's not the end of things. We can definitely change our thought patterns. So some of the negative thought patterns we often call cognitive distortions. So such as overgeneralizing, having all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, jumping to conclusions, catastrophizing, assuming everything is my fault. All these types of patterns are common to most of us. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up and feel guilty because it's part of human nature. But at the same time, it no longer serves us in today's society. We no longer have to have negative thinking and be on guard and waiting for danger or some sort of event to impact us. So, cognitive behavioral therapy is a great way to create alternative ways of thinking.
What does negative thinking do to us in the long term?
Well, negative thinking, I touched on in an earlier episode about how stress impacts us. Negative thinking does as well. Negative thinking is, in fact, a type of stress that affects our immune system, our nervous system, and can have long term physical effects on us as well. So we become aware of our negative self talk, and everyone has self talk. We're just not always aware of it. So there's actually a dialogue or a narrative going on in your mind as you go about your day. You just may not be aware of it. And if you pause for a moment and think, what is my brain saying to me? We'll often notice that there's negative thoughts going on. It's like a story that we tell ourselves in our mind that we don't really realize. It's our subconscious narrative, and we can purposefully challenge it. And it determines our core beliefs about ourselves as well. And when we get down to thinking about how do I really feel about myself, what sort of filter or lens am I seeing the world through, that determines many of our thought patterns, behaviors, and actions. So many times we try to change a behavior without looking back in terms of what caused this behavior in the first place. Because there's a reason why we behave the way we do. And it comes back to our feelings and our thoughts and really finding the root cause where all of these thought patterns started. So you got to dive a little
Are there
deeper.
are there some personality types um, who are able to change more quickly or more easily? Or is it easier to change when you're younger and you've practiced a habit for less time rather than for more time?
I think it's a multitude of factors. I think it's what kind of support system do you have? The people around you, are they positive influences in your life or are they negative? And also in terms of your childhood, were you given skills and tools and ways to deal with stress? Are you resilient? Do you have that background to rely on in terms of dealing with these issues? So I don't think there's any one type of personality. I think we're all capable of change. I think it's a matter of becoming aware of it, finding the tools, and then changing it. But yeah, it's the pausing and becoming aware first, and then learning the tools to change it.
Thanks for joining us, Sue. And how can we get more information about this?
You can Google white brick therapy and book an initial free consult. Thanks for having me on the show, Queenie.
Great. Sue, thank you so much for joining us today.